All right, everyone, welcome back to Just Jossin. This is week 3. We are your hosts. I'm Sabrina Hannon.
And I'm Jasmine Heron. This week we are going to be discussing the rest of season 1. So that is starting with episode 7, I, Robot, You, Jane. Moving through to the puppet show, nightmares, out of mind, out of sight, and then we're going to end with Prophecy Girl. So these are the final 5 episodes of season 1. In future seasons, we're going to be switching up a little bit more how we break up the seasons, but we don't want to be solely focusing just on Buffy, and we have a lot to talk about in the Whedonverse, so we wanted to get through season 1 as quickly and as effectively as possible.
Yes. So yeah, we're starting off with I, Robot, You, Jane. And this is the first time that we are introduced to Jenny Calendar, who is a character that we will see for the next season or so. She's this new age woman, someone who is really into computers, and obviously that means she's the devil to Giles. And from there, well, we know a bit of romance springs up. It's clear, I think, pretty early on that there's like a fiery love between them.
Yep. So, of course, we start off the episode, and we are in Cortona, Italy. And this is not the last time that Cortona shows up in Buffy season 1. And so we are in Cortona, Italy, and we have these Italian monks, or these brothers, who have said that Moloch the Corruptor has been released or set loose upon the world. He has risen. And apparently Moloch just, wants people to love him. And once they love him, or once they declare their love for him, he kills them. Yep. He enjoys a good neck snap. So, he gets sucked into a book, into this language that does not look like Italian to me. Doesn't look like Italian to you, does it?
No, it looks like jarbled stuff. Yeah. Not even letters.
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know what Etruscan looks like, what the Etruscan language looks like, but apparently Cortona is home for the Etruscan language too. So it's possible that that's where it came from. Or it's just demonic gibberish. So the next time we see the book is in Giles's library, and where we've got Jenny Calendar and Willow and Xander, and then we have Fritz and Dave. Mm-hmm. And Fritz was played by Jameson Ryan, who only appeared in 3 different shows or movies in 1997, and then completely quit acting. But Dave is Chan Lindbergh, and he was on Supernatural as Ash. He's in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Dwight. He definitely made a name and a career for himself in
this kind of niche.
Yes. Yep. So as you said, we meet Jenny Calendar, and it's kind of the clash between the Luddite and the mystical and the technological.
Techno-pagan, that's what she calls herself.
Yeah, techno-pagan. And then, of course, Fritz, being a crazy person, says, if you're not jacked in, you're not alive. Mm-hmm. The only existence is the only reality is virtual reality.
Yeah, nothing says, my high school experience is shit quite like that.
And so, there Willow is, and she's kind of getting snubbed a little bit by Xander. She's saying, Xander, hang out with me while I stay here doing this kind of boring task. And he's like, bye, off chasing after Buffy like a, sad little puppy dog. And she, once again, having revealed, at least to Buffy, that she has feelings for Xander, is left by herself. And as she's scanning, we have Moloch's Where Am I? That shows up as he's been scanned and released into the internet.
And the audience gasps and they do the intro, like the.
Mm-hmm. And so the next thing we see is apparently a few weeks have passed, and Willow is deeply involved with an online relationship with Malcolm, who she has not seen. She's been up late night talking with Malcolm and doesn't know what he looks like, but that kind of makes Buffy a little nervous because she doesn't think that a relationship can be real with someone that you haven't met in person.
Mm-hmm.
Now this
And,
is...
oh, I think we were about to say the same thing. Like this was, in the mid 90s. So like Buffy repeatedly refers to email as electronic mail and things like that. Or what is your electronic address and things like
Yep.
that.
If I want to send an internet letter or a...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was just one of those things where as I was watching, I'm like, if someone who is like a teenager today were to watch this, they would be looking at it like we watched something, how we reacted to things from like the 50s.
So I was thinking back to when I was a sophomore in high school, and that was 2001, like, yeah, it was 2001, 2002. So about 5 years later, but that was the rise of AOL Instant Messenger.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, you would hear when someone logged online, like a little door opening, like a little, and you were like, oh, the boy that I like from school is online. And you would get this little, like, excitement. And then you didn't want to be the one to message them first. So you would put something up in your away message.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or in your profile, and you had to make sure your AIM profile was just perfect to let the one that you liked to know that you were available and funny and
cool.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would pick your screen name, and I still have, I think, the same screen name that I used from AIM back then. But if you think about, sometimes there were relationships that I developed in high school, what would now, I guess, be considered a pen pal, or would have back then be considered a pen pal.
Yeah.
I had friends that I was deeply emotionally invested in, and still have 20 years later almost, that started with, they lived in California and we would message each other every single day, and it felt like a real friendship. It felt like a real relationship. But back in 1997, they did bring up the real point, the real question of, you don't know who is on the other side of this, of the screen.
And that part's still true today, like, because we know even with like pictures and everything else, like, doesn't matter. But I feel like kids are a little more wiser to that because there's so much education put at them for that. But back then, in the mid 90s, it was a new technology. So like you had adults like Giles who simply didn't know what was going on. So they weren't able to warn kids. So if he was a parent, like his kids would have been open season for a predator.
Yep.
And I mean, Willow's parents were probably the same way, considering what happens.
Yep. Well, I mean, Willow's parents are pretty much like
Hands off. Yeah.
So, oh, parents are working late. Dad, did you forget your keys again? Quote, like those quotes that Willow says from the episode to show that she's almost like a latchkey kid.
Oh, yeah.
And so she is, easy pickings for a predator to say, oh, I'm a 15-year-old girl living by myself at home by myself on the internet, becoming deeply emotionally involved with someone whose face I've never seen.
One of the things I thought was really interesting too, when Buffy is sitting and talking with Willow about what's going on, through that little webcam, we see Malik or Malcolm looking at them, and that's how he sees who Buffy is. And that's something that happens now, that like we're having to educate people about, like, you know, if you're not using your laptop, make sure you have something covering your camera and things like that, which is still very relevant. And I don't think it was really happening too much back then. It's interesting that Joss Whedon, though, was like, hey, this is a very real possibility. Like, if the camera's looking at you when it's off, who's to say someone can't turn it on electronically?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the term catfishing, of like making up a personality to get someone to be attracted to you, when did that originate?
I don't know.
We can ask the internet. Because what I was thinking about is, like, is this one of the first situations of a catfishing scenario where, you know, we're faced with, Xander brings it up. He says, I could say I'm a high school student. And she's like, well, you are a high school student. And then he says, yes, but I could also say I'm a little old Dutch lady. And who's to prove I'm not? If I'm in the little old Dutch lady, you're making a face. So I'm thinking you found something about catfishing.
Yeah, it's just strange because it originated in 2010 with an American documentary called Catfish. I definitely would have thought it was older. I'm old. That's what my face was.
the face of, oh dear, that thing that we thought happened so long ago was only a decade ago. And this happened first.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm sad. I'm not saying that, you know, Joss Whedon, and even back then, the situation was happening, was possibly occurring, but there wasn't a term coined for it yet, or not a popular term coined for it yet. Because now the colloquialism is catfishing.
Yes.
It could have been mollocking. We could.
That also sounds like a fish, doesn't it?
Yeah, or mollusking.
Yeah. You're like flapping around on your deck or something. That's what it is. Frying in the sun.
Yep. So yeah, like, I think this is kind of interesting, how there are these very real dangers of the internet and of electronic relationships, and about like the physical and the mental relationships that one can have. For that timeline, it still exists today. But also they're kind of taking it the next step with, you know, there's a demon on the internet. It's not just there's predators on the internet. There is a demon on the internet.
Yeah.
And this demon is able to corrupt the minds of, you know, the otherwise disaffected youth, like, you know, Fritz and Dave. Yeah. And he is able to turn, you know, Fritz into a full-blown killer. Mm-hmm. And to be fair, Fritz was a little loony to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, this definitely takes the idea of finding easier prey. It's more accessible for them.
Yeah. And clearly, like, Fritz did not have parents who were paying attention at all. Absolutely at all.
Literally. And so this is actually something that I was trying to relate to, is he's cutting himself. Like, he is self-harming at one point. He's saying, I'm jacked in, while he is carving the name Malcolm or Moloch, you just see the Mal, into his arm. And nobody sees that. Nobody comments upon that. And there are cases of high school students and younger self-harming and then covering it up, and nobody's really checking in and seeing what's going on internally, emotionally, or mentally that's making you inflict wounds upon yourself.
Yeah.
I really feel like Joss did a good job of showing, you know, the demons, but then also the demons that, I feel weird saying children or teenagers, that teenagers were dealing with in high school. You know, this was a Monster of the Week type episode, but it was talking about, you know, like actual real life demons that people were dealing with.
As I said, Monster of the Week, those tend to, Joss, I think this is the only one that has this, where it's either it introduces a character that we're going to have for a long time, even if they don't come back for seasons, or it has a really important moral in it. This one, it's the two combined. I think in the first season, this is the only one of its kind with this. I have a question though. So sure. Malik, when he becomes Malcolm, do you think they went with Malcolm because of com, like .com?
I didn't before, but now I do. Malcolm.
Yeah. I also like that I think this is the first time, maybe the only time, that finally Xander's paranoia is correct. Like, yes. When he's like, this doesn't seem right. Like, danger, danger, danger. It's finally correct.
And, you know, Xander is problematic because although he is danger, 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 it's more because he's not getting
the attention.
His back burner girl giving him attention.
Yeah.
And, you know, Willow all of a sudden isn't there. And up until now in the season, Willow is always there when Xander turns around and expects her. We have, you know, Jenny Calendar and her banter, and, you know, saying things like, he's like, well, we'll pick up this conversation later. And she's like, we were fighting, you know? And he's like, yes, we must do it again. And
yes. I also, when she tells Giles that she's like hip to the stuff he's into, being like the demons and everything, I have to imagine at that moment on the inside, his heart just went boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
If only she didn't like computers.
And she's just so very, you know, confident. Jenny Calendar is a confident woman.
Yes.
And, you know, he asks, are you a witch? And she's like, no, I don't have that kind of power, but this is what I am. This is how I identify. And she's just very open about it. And I almost feel like that's a little bit like queer coding almost, like, or I don't, like, you know, or alluding to a person who is out and proud.
Yes.
And without making a big deal about coming out, just saying, this is what I am. This is who I am. You know, this is what I believe. And for you to be stuck in your conservative mindset is your problem, not mine. And she said, there are a lot more of us than you would think. And to me, in my mind, that was just very much kind of like someone saying, oh yes, there are a lot of gay people. There are a lot of trans people. There are a lot of, you know, like non-binary, like, just the idea of the other.
Yeah.
And her confidence level for it, I thought was incredible.
Yeah. Throughout the entire thing, she's a very positive, a very, I want to say no nonsense kind of gal, although she does enjoy a bit of the fun. But she knows what she wants. She has a very good idea about how to get it. And even when it comes to Giles a little bit later, like.
Yep. And I think she's got a little bit of kink to her, but she is also a little bit of kink. She's also not ashamed or not secretive about it. So when he's like, oh, I don't dangle a corkscrew from my earring, she's like, that's not where I dangle it. And so immediately I'm like, well, okay, is it a belly button ring or is
My
nipple.
entire life I've gone to nipple.
So I was also wondering if maybe it was like a labial piercing or something. Like, is she just hula hooping with it, like dangling in between her legs?
I never ever considered any other area but nipple.
Well, if she's only got one, I would think, like,
Maybe she has a third nipple. Don't judge. One right in the middle.
and she says, that's not where it dangles. Okay, where does it dangle? Don't leave us hanging like your corkscrew. Like, so yeah, I think it was a really good, and I still, in my mind, lump I, Robot You, Jane as a Monster of the Week story, but it does do so much character building and world building that, and the introduction of Jen and Calendar. And again, like I said, season 1, a lot of times you've got, Monster of the Week episodes, but they are building the world and they are introducing important characters.
Yeah, it's not just like we had this episode, what are we going to do? Like, I love the show Supernatural, but in that show you do have episodes, specifically in the first season, where they're not building an arc. They might be building the relationship between the brothers a little bit, but that's
Here's a monster and we kill it. Here's a monster and we kill it. You know?
Also, at the very end of the episode, there's something that is said. I don't remember which one of the Scoobies said it, but it's so true. It goes all the way through the show, and it's none of us are ever going to have a happy, normal relationship.
Yep.
Everyone you love people will die. Buckle up.
Yeah, it's true. Like, and they laugh, and then there's this moment in their laughter where they're like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. This is not funny. Like, this is bad. Joss Whedon had an audio cameo in this episode. He was the newscaster letting everybody know about all the craziness that was happening, like, in the world and on the internet. So I thought that was a little bit of cool trivia. But I was looking up the actors' names and where are they now, and it said newscaster Joss Whedon, and I was like, oh, okay. So then we move into Puppet Show, which is the school talent show, which never happens again. And so we start off with Cordelia butchering a Whitney Houston song.
Yeah.
And
can Cordelia, the actress, can Charisma Carpenter actually sing, or is she someone that's how she actually sounds?
I think she can sing better than that, but not.
No one would pay to have her sing? Okay.
So I think that she was purposely singing worse than she is able to, but not having intrinsic talent for singing. So.
Gotcha.
And that's just from, I guess, again, from seeing her singing in Angel in the future. Like, in the TV show Angel, she sings a couple of times, and she's not fantabulous, but she's not bad.
That bad, yeah.
So, but maybe that was a character choice. Like, maybe that's something that
It's a memorable choice, to be fair. So, I mean, it's a good choice. Good on Charisma Carpenter, if that were the case.
So we start off with her butchering the song, and then Buffy and Xander and Willow are mocking Giles for being the producer of the school talent show. And he refers to the new principal as the Fuhrer.
Yep. And as we know, since it is a Monster of the Week episode, one of two things is going to happen. And it's a character introduction.
Yep. And so we get introduced to Principal Snyder, who's replacing Principal Flutie, and it's Armin Shimmerman.
I don't know how to say his name.
Saying that name right, but he is one of the great loves of my media life. He plays Quark in Deep Space Nine from Star Trek.
He's in Beauty and the Beast, the 1980s show, and he played a very actually endearing character, Pascal, who was obsessed with the pipes and the communication systems. So he's actually a beloved character on that, and I saw that first. It was weird seeing him as Principal Snyder, who is evil, basically.
And in Stargate, he was in the Stargate SG-1 show as well. He plays the father figure of the Nox, which are a peaceful, highly intelligent and well advanced species, alien species that are complete pacifists, which is very different again from the quite antagonistic Snyder that we are introduced to. Mm-hmm. Now, Snyder starts off, one of his first lines is saying that he does not want to get eaten like Principal Flutie.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately foreshadows his grisly demise at the end, mm-hmm. where he says that, lack of discipline and lack of order leads to getting eaten. And we get this introduction, and he is shown as being this ominous being.
Very tiny.
Yes, tiny but ominous. They actually talked about in later cast interviews, he said that there's a scene where he comes up behind Buffy comes up behind Buffy backstage, and his shadow looks like the Nosferatu's shadow on the wall. And they kept it because it was so funny, and so it wasn't intentional, but there he is, all stooped and sinister looking. And there are some times in this episode where you're wondering, is he going to be the demon? Mm-hmm. Or no, but he's not the demon, he's just a principal. A very mean, very strict principal who gets a little bit of pleasure from torturing his students, mm-hmm. because he immediately punishes Xander and Willow and Buffy by telling them they have to participate in the school talent show because they were mocking those that were participating in the talent show.
But among the talent show folks, we have Sid the dummy with, is it Morgan? Yeah, Morgan. And it starts off terrible, he's doing ventriloquism. You can see his mouth moving when it's talking as a dummy. And then all of a sudden, the act gets really good, and Sid the dummy is mocking Morgan, and Morgan looks very upset about this. So it becomes, a good act. And Buffy is immediately freaked out because she doesn't like dummies.
Mm-hmm. They just give her the wig.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit confused about some of the dynamics of Sid the dummy. So throughout the episode, you just see Sid being carted around, and he's in so many situations, and we soon find out that Sid is a former demon hunter that was cursed into the body of a dummy. But there are several scenes where Sid the dummy is there while Xander and Buffy and Willow and Giles are talking about, we need to find this demon. And he's just being, playing dummy. Mm-hmm. But surely he can hear what they're saying, yeah. And isn't processing, they're looking for the demon, so they're not the demon?
Yeah. Unless he just thought that, Buffy was doing a really good job. If you were a demon, you would want to align yourself with the people who are looking for the demon.
Uh-huh.
I like how serial killers screw themselves over sometimes.
getting into the investigation.
Yeah, Joss Whedon actually had said that it was really difficult filming, and he underestimated how difficult it was going to be filming the scenes with the dummy where he's like walking on his own and stuff like that. That it was a much bigger undertaking than he had initially realized.
Mm-hmm. So we get to history class, and we're in history class, and Buffy is sitting in the back, and Sid the dummy turns his head to look at her, and here's what I noticed. Cordelia is sitting next to Buffy, just as she was in the first episode in history class when she passes over her book in history so that Buffy can read. And so they actually kept the same seating from episode to episode.
Mm-hmm.
For Buffy in history class, and this is where Buffy sits in history class, and this is where Cordelia sits in history class, and they have class together.
Yeah.
So I thought that, again, it's those little attention to detail, like specifics that Joss Whedon does to make sure that continuity follows from episode to episode.
I think he had to be like a really big geek like as a kid, and it had to bother him to no end when there were inconsistencies that he noticed. So I feel like he went out of his way to make sure his viewers would not have that same experience.
Mm-hmm.
The dummy is a deeply problematic character, though, because again, it's a dummy that's really, really old, that is hitting on, well, a person who's trapped in a dummy that's really, really old, that's like really creepy with Buffy.
And I mean, so creepy with Willow, creepy with Buffy. Mm-hmm. And at one point, he's like, "Oh, you're the Slayer," and he uses the word nubile.
Yes.
And it kind of like drifts off with his porn face.
Yeah.
So nubile is used to describe sexually mature little girls,
yep.
Sexually mature girls who have just reached the cusp of marriage age. Basically the idea of you were nubile when you had reached sexual maturity, you were ready to be married off. And so he's saying, look at you, 15-year-old girl, because she's still 15 at this point, 15-year-old girl, you're nubile. And he lusts for her.
Yeah. Ugh. Oh.
Buffy was, so Sarah Michelle Gellar was 19.
Yeah.
When she filmed this as a 15-year-old. So she's playing someone who's 4 years younger than her actual age. But I still find it problematic because even if she were 19, there's this 60-plus-year-old man putting his creepy little wood hand on her leg. And,
yep.
and telling, like, if you want to cuddle me close, and like,
yeah.
Hey, no, not okay.
Once you go wood, nothing's as good. Like, so gross.
And so I think, again, flashback to little Jasmine in high school, being 15 years old and thinking, I'm so adult.
Mm-hmm.
I'm such a grown-up. As compared to 30-year-old Jasmine, who's like, I'm not an adult. What am I thinking?
Yeah.
But, 15-year-old Jasmine thinking, I am such an adult, and I identify with these great loves and these, the sexual tension and, the dynamics that are happening between these characters, thinking that it's okay because they're so mature and we're so mature. And looking back now, I'm like, no. Oh, goodness, no.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that also kind of relates to being a teenager and having that mentality.
Yeah. And that would definitely be heightened for Buffy because she is dealing with life and death all of the time. She's forced to grow up against her will. I mean, but she still takes things in, and she clearly has an emotional maturity still of a teenager, which we see later on, especially when it comes to boys, like her relationship with Angel. Like it's very, very clear that she emotionally is 15. Like just because she has all these powers, and she and has to confront death all the time, does not mean that she herself is still, that doesn't magically make her 40.
So I don't want to give a lecture on this because I do not know enough about the material to give a lecture on it. But there is a form of abuse called adultification or parentification, where you force a person into a role of responsibility to age them up emotionally and mentally beyond where they should be in their life.
Yes.
And I feel like although it is not done purposefully to Buffy, Buffy experiences that just by being the Slayer. Mm-hmm. She has received from the universe, like the pressures of adultification. And she also has the trauma that comes with that. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, that is very heavy to be weighed upon. And some people who have experienced adultification or parentification as a form of abuse take years later to unpack that trauma and expose and understand and deal with how it has affected their maturity levels and their ways of dealing with things in the future or in the present as adults, as actual adults, not just small children being treated as adults. Mm-hmm. And so I think, you know, this is something that although Buffy as the Slayer, the universe is doing this to her, it is not okay for Angel and it's not okay for Sid the dummy to be treating her as someone sexually more than 15.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, like, Buffy's mom certainly doesn't. Buffy's mom reminds her constantly how old she is. Yes. Giles, while he expects a certain amount of responsibility from her, also, I think more so in later seasons, really understands that she is a teenager. Especially once we get into the third season, that's when you really see that happening. I mean, he definitely steps into a father role. I mean, he gets in trouble for that exact thing, because he becomes very this season he's already protective of her, and he clearly sees her as a child, who, and because she brings it up, like, you know, I'm this old, like, it's not fair, and he as an adult recognizes that and wants to protect her.
Yes.
And in the correct way. There's no like creepiness about it.
Yep. And so again, this is very much a Monster of the Week episode where, you know, we get through and we find that the actual demon is the magician.
And he wants Giles' sweet, sweet brain.
And he wants Giles' sweet, sweet brain. It was either between him or Willow, and, you know, Giles was there. Mm-hmm. And so they, you know, they kill the demon, and Sid the dummy dies because he doesn't have a human body to go back to. So his sweet release from his curse is being allowed to die. And, you know, okay, so all that has happened. And then the curtains open. As Buffy says, it's over. The curtains open. And, oh yeah, there's a talent show that still needs to go on. Even though 3 of our people are now dead. 3 of our contestants.
Yeah, actors. Oh. And I love Snyder's reaction.
Yep.
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
And so then, this was actually one of the only times they did this. They put in a scene that there was not time for in the actual show, but they really wanted to run it. And it's the awkward scene of Buffy and Xander and Willow performing Oedipus Rex.
Yes, it's awful. It's awful. And Willow just like runs off stage.
Yep.
As I think that was an acceptable choice.
Yes, that was so talented.
I also have to say, as someone who's done theater, and I know you have as well, Jasmine, Giles leads by far the worst power circle I've seen in my life.
So the power circle is supposed to be a before the performance, like emotional psych up where everybody gets ready and you breathe and
football huddle.
Mm-hmm.
Like a football huddle before.
Yes, and like you psych yourselves up and you scream. We used to have a guy that would scream the monologue from Braveheart. As a, just remember, they may take our lives, but they'll never take. And then we would all scream our freedom. And that was just to like really, rile ourselves up. And so, yeah, so Giles's power circle is everybody hold hands. Power circle.
All right, get ready, everyone. That was it. Nothing says, I didn't ask for this job and I have no idea what it is.
Yep.
Quite like that.
I love it. Sid's the one that tells him, form the power circle.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, as if he's supposed to know what that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is clueless. Just because he's British doesn't mean he's Shakespeare.
Yep.
And then our next one is Nightmares, which is another monster of the week.
It is a monster of the week, but it does allude to more.
Yes. It's like mon-arc. It's a mon-arc.
Yes. I like it. You've coined a new term.
The mon-arc episodes.
Now we need like a little, emoji or something with little king's crown or queen's crown.
Oh, yeah.
It's a monarch episode. Crown.
I wonder. Hang on. Wait. Oh, no, I can only do a thumbs up or a clap.
So we open at Nightmares with Buffy having a dream of the Master. And the Master is overpowering her. I kept being pulled out of the scene because of the Master's awful press-on nails. Like, you could physically see his regular human thumbnail under his, like, arched up and over press-on nails.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond just my, personal distaste for really bad press-on nails, we have Buffy waking up from her dream, and it's her mother telling her she has to get ready for school. And so we then go to school, and there's discussion about homework and active listening with Xander once again being a problematic teenage boy who can't even remember the demonstration that he was a part of the day before. And because he's too busy objectifying the teacher.
Yep. I feel like after this season, Xander's problematicness decreases significantly.
My personal nightmare, Wendell, who had the audacity of being in Cordelia's light, opens his book, and I stop looking at the screen because tarantulas start crawling out everywhere and all over him, and they're on him, and I'm an arachnophobe, so I'm going to turn over the scene to you.
Yeah, like, even if you're not afraid of spiders, like, it's a lot to take in.
It was terrible for me. Now, I did notice something about this episode in terms of camera angle and lighting, which is every time we are in psychic dreamland world where a nightmare is occurring, the camera goes to a lower angle, looking up, and also kind of phases into a blue light.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the angle being down looking up is because um
The little boy.
because of the little boy Billy.
Yep.
Billy is, ultimately the one who is psychically projecting the nightmare realm onto the real world. But I thought it was very interesting. So a couple of times Buffy looks over and you see this little boy, 12-year-old boy, I think he's supposed to be.
Maybe. He might be a little bit. The actor looks younger, but it might be that he's supposed to be 12.
Mm-hmm. And just he's very young and he's kind of skulking around and he's watching as these things are happening, and Buffy is noticing him but not really taking note or not really comprehending what's happening. Of course, there are spiders everywhere, so that can be a distraction from, oh hey little boy. I just know if I saw like a little boy wandering around and then spiders, I would put the two and two together and be like, oh hey, there was this weirdo kid who wasn't supposed to be there right at the same time as the spiders showed up. Maybe the two are connected. We live on a Hellmouth.
That we didn't talk. So Buffy having like not seeming off and having the nightmare, it's the first time that it's mentioned, but she's supposed to be going to spend the weekend with her father. And her mom brings it up like, are you nervous about seeing your dad? And she gets really upset when they get to school because she realizes she forgot her bag. And she's like, no, I packed it. And her mom was like, it's fine, just swing by the house to get it. Like you can tell that Buffy's anxious about this.
Yes.
And which makes sense when we get to Buffy's nightmare. Her first one. Well, when she's awake, not the master nightmare.
Yeah. So we have the master, speaking of the master, talking to the anointed one. And he says the most powerful human emotion is fear. Not love, not hate, fear. And you can use it to control people. And I have to say, I am drawing parallels with that and what is happening in our world today.
Yeah.
Where people are being driven by fear. And that is causing them to lash out with hate. But it is the fear mongering that is driving those forces.
I would disagree though that it's not, with his statement of it's not love, because I think what we've seen in human history in the past is it's always people standing up for like, even like people who are like, I want my children to grow up in a better, like that sort of love. Like they realize that they might be giving up their own life. They realize that within their lifetime, they may not see the changes that they are working so hard for. So it's not for love of self that they're doing it. It's for love of others. That eventually drives out that fear or that hate. But fear is definitely stronger than hatred. Fear creates the hatred.
I thought it was, again, the master is evil. Like the master is bad. So he is not going to view love as being powerful. He's like, love is goodness. Love is, compassion and caring. And he's evil, so he's going to look at what tools can I use to affect those around me. Love, hate, fear. Fear is the most powerful. Like, I will make people fear me. I will make people fear the world that I'm going to create. And that is how I will control others.
But what's interesting, his most loyal supporters, or like Darla, for example, that was clearly a love relationship. So, like even in saying that, he is completely underestimating that plenty of his subjects fear him, and Darla has a little bit of fear towards him too, but it is mostly love towards her sire.
Yeah.
And that's what makes her so loyal, not the fear.
Mm-hmm. And so we start learning about the fears of all the many people in the school and in the Scoobies.
Yeah.
And so Giles' biggest fear, harkening back to Puppet Show, is losing his brain.
Well, first he gets lost in the stacks.
Yep.
And he's so confused by that. But then his bigger fear happens.
He can't read.
Which, that is terrifying. They do that to him again, too, later on when they take away his sight.
Mm-hmm. But I think, this is showing in Puppet Show, he almost physically lost his brain.
Mm-hmm.
But now he is psychically losing his brain. And this is a fear, that people, as they get older and develop dementia or Alzheimer's or even just, age, become more forgetful, become more confused, have difficulty with reading and focusing.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone who has built his identity upon his brain and his intellect, to lose that is his fear. That is his deeper fear.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to Xander, whose fear is being in his underwear. Like, Xander's is a little bit more of a simple guy, where he's like, oh, I'm embarrassed, I'm in my underwear. Oh, there was a scary clown. Like, his fears are a lot more concrete.
Generic.
Yep. Willow.
I love Willow's fear.
Of public performance, harkening right on back to Puppet Show, where she was like, that was terrifying. Mm-hmm. I was so terrified to be up on stage, and then she's up on stage.
And I love the, I think he's a tenor, that is like looking, like that look that the tenor gives her on stage. I just love that, the like the go on.
And she's like,
this is your part. Yeah.
Yes. So, we're seeing again, though, that Xander's fears and Willow's fears and Cordelia's fears and their child's fears, their children's fears. Mm-hmm. And Buffy's fear is that her dad doesn't love her.
Yep.
Buffy's fear is that she caused her parents to break up.
Mm-hmm. It
is not about embarrassment. Again, it's that adultification. She, she has deeper, more emotional, traumatic fears than those of her peers.
That her fear there always, my parents got divorced when I was 2.5. So her fear is a very normal one for anyone who has divorced parents. Now I was so young when it happened, the fear that it was because of me wasn't really there. That and the fact that my mother was very honest with me about why. It was not hidden why my parents split up, had absolutely nothing to do with me, had very much so to do with my father. But because my mother had custody of me and I would only see my father sometimes, and Buffy has this later, but I have siblings, older siblings. So there was that fear of does my father love me? So I can very much so identify with that. Willow and Xander, their families are still together. Their parents are not really there. I don't think we ever see Xander's parents. We see Willow's once, but Joyce is always there. She's in almost every episode. She is a constant. She is the parent that is there.
Yeah.
So it makes so much sense to me that Buffy's fear is that her father doesn't love her. When he says, I'm not really getting anything out of these visits. Mm-hmm. I'm just ugh. Also, I got really stoked because Hank Summers is Almanzo on Little House on the Prairie, and I loved Little House on the Prairie as a kid. So the first time I saw him as Buffy's dad, I was like, yeah.
Keep fears. Cordelia's fears is that she's having a bad hair day, that she has
and on the chess club, right?
And being part of the chess club. And there's like this crazy like leather jacket, sunglass biker dude whose mom shows up to give him smooches. And
yeah.
But again, those are, like I want to say more childish fears. Mm-hmm. And then we get to, Billy's nightmare, and then the actual nightmares of Buffy and Giles.
Yeah.
Which are, again, much more adult. So Billy is facing a monster man, the ugly man.
And Billy, they violate HIPAA terribly with this by putting this kid's information all over the news.
Yep.
Everywhere. He's this little boy who was found and is in a coma. No one knows why he was beaten, but there's no suspects, no nothing, which is bizarro to me.
He was beaten into a coma, and
who knows? Parents, man. And so, and that's the little boy that she's seeing around, which they realize, I think she picks up the paper or something, because newspapers were a thing that were around.
Yes. And also Giles was looking and he could see the pictures, but he couldn't read. So he's like, maybe? And she's like, yep, this is the kid.
Yep. So that's what's going on with Billy. That's how she knows who he is.
Mm-hmm. And so we learn that he's ugly man, and she's talking to him and she's reaching out to him, and he's saying things like, it's bad when you lose baseball, it's bad. And she's like, it's a game. Like, and then he says, I'm the reason we lost. It was my fault. And she's like, no, you were part of a team. And she's, really helping him understand that he was not at fault, that he is not, he did not deserve what the ugly man did to him. Mm-hmm. He did not deserve to be a victim. And, then more of Buffy's fears come to light, where she's being overpowered by a demon, and then she's overpowered by the master, and then she is killed and buried alive. And, at this point, reality is really getting out of control. There's like helicopters and giant bees, and like, Xander has finally stood up to his clown fear by punching the clown in the face. Mm-hmm. And like, he's like, yeah, I feel better about that now. Like, okay, good job. Like, he confronted his very generic fear.
Good job, Xander.
Good job. You did it. Like, he confronted the fear that he had from when he was 6, and they go outside and they see Giles's next fear, which is that he has failed Buffy and that she has died. Mm-hmm. And this is followed by Buffy's fear, which is combined with Buffy's fear, that she will turn into a vampire. Mm-hmm. Now, she obviously is not really a vampire because she still has her Buffy soul. So she is still, so like, she has the visage of a vampire, but she has not actually been overtaken by a demon. Yeah. This is still altered reality, not mystical, mystical transformation.
Yeah.
It is a nightmare that she's having, not an actual loss of soul. And so, they say, okay, it's time to confront this. We need to wake up Billy. And she recognizes that she cannot be the one to end the ugly man. She can be the one to help fight the ugly man, but in order to end the nightmare, Billy has to, 1, stand up to him, but 2, unmask confront and unmask his nightmare, which is, as it turns out, to be his Kitty League coach.
And I think what Joss does here is very important. Like, he shows that the hero isn't always someone who beats the bad guy. Sometimes the hero is the person who empowers others. Because that's exactly what Buffy does.
Yep. I'm here, I support you, you have the power here. And an evil kitty coach who is just a guy. This isn't a demon. This is just a terrible human being who attacked a small child. You know, and he ends up behind bars, as he should. But
I think if he hadn't, Giles would have put him into that grave that Buffy crawled out of.
Yep.
The look on Giles's face when he like sees and realizes. I just love Anthony Stewart Head.
I know. Great love for Anthony Stewart Head. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a little confused as to what happens with the Master. Like, Master, like, pops out of his grave out of his Hellmouth tomb because of altered reality, and then pops right back into it. Like,
yeah, that part's a little wonky. Like, because he, like, when he pops out, because he's part of this night, he has to know on, like, some level kind of what's going on. So I'm sure in his head he's like, wee!
Party!
Yeah, nightmare for you, dream for me. But yeah, I would imagine, like, I wish they would have, like, done a scene of him, like, back down, just being like, shucks.
Help in the cage.
There goes all my fun. Like that, as this episode is closing out, Willow says to Xander, like, you weren't still attracted to Buffy when she was a vampire, were you? And he's like, no, that'd be great. And he was just like, and she says to her, like, where are you? And he was like, I'm a sick man.
Yep. I'm sick and I need help.
Yep. And I mean, Xander will have a long romantic career with demons and everything else.
Yep.
Vampire, though.
Well, I think it's interesting because he totally judges Buffy for still being attracted to Angel when she finds out Angel's a vampire. Mm-hmm. But when he finds out, like, that Buffy is a vampire, he's still attracted to her. Mm-hmm. So then we end with, so we're actually moving on to
Out of Sight, Out of Mind.
Out of Sight, Out of Mind. Mm-hmm. Which again is a Monster of the Week episode.
Yep.
Now, I don't really feel like I've got a ton to touch upon with this one. Do you?
No. I would say, so they do and don't introduce a character. And by character, I mean the U.S. government.
Yes.
That is the big thing with this episode. The U.S. government at the very end. So
what I would get from Out of Sight, Out of Mind is that we have a student, Marcy, who is completely ignored during her entire career, freshman year and sophomore year of high school. She's not just ignored by her peers where she tries to make connections with them. She's ignored by teachers who don't call on her when she raises her hand. They just don't see her. They don't interact with her. Everybody writes in her yearbook, have a nice summer, which is the generic, like, I don't know you and have no shared experiences with you. Mm-hmm. And as she feels invisible, she becomes invisible. And as she becomes invisible, she starts focusing on Cordelia, who is in the center light of, you know, all of Sunnydale.
Queenness, yeah,
all of her queenness. Excuse me. And so she becomes obsessed with, you know, defacing Cordelia's beauty because, you know, she hasn't been seen, she can't be seen, but she's going to make Cordelia be really seen and memorable in a different way.
Yes. So
she has her whole leaving messages, look, listen, learn.
Terrible CGI.
We have Angel showing up to talk to Giles a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And Giles says there is something called the Codex that has been lost in the 15th century. And Angel's like, nah, I can get it for you. Like, I know where it is. I'll go get it.
Also, at this point, I don't believe Angel had ever met Giles prior to this, correct? But he just knows that Giles is Buffy's watcher. Creep. He knows where to find Giles. And Giles obviously knows who he is. But, I mean, Giles has been told.
Yes.
Giles is very up to date on who he is.
Yes.
So this just really goes into, like, Angel has really stalked the shit out of Buffy's life. She knows everything and everyone connected to her.
Yes.
Like a creep.
So we've got this little, which is kind of like an arc building thing coming up for the final episode.
Yes.
Where he says he's going to go off and going to find the Codex. Okay, and then we're moving back forward, and Cordelia is starting to stay out of her outer orbit, and she's starting to kind of orbit closer to the Scooby Gang.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. One thing that's really important, I think, in this episode is when Cordelia's getting ready for all the May Queen stuff, when she's standing there, everyone's helping with the dress and everything. Buffy says earlier she had been May Queen at her previous school. She is literally looking through this window at Cordelia, looking at her old life. But she has to leave, and she has to go slay things. And it's just this, like, it's this moment where she knows exactly what she left behind. And she chooses to walk away from it again.
And so she was May Queen, and I guess in her freshman year, which is
really shows how popular she was.
And they look at this, but then Marcy kidnaps her. Now Cordelia has some gems of lines in this show when she's talking about Shiloh and Merchant of Venice, and she's like, oh, he's so whiny. Like, this time I accidentally sort of ran over this girl, and she was complaining about her leg, but what about my trauma?
Yes. Yes. And the teacher's like, insightful, Cordelia. What are you doing? Don't encourage the sociopath.
Still, again, she comes across as so vapid, and she is very vapid. But then there are other times when she says to Buffy, I can be surrounded by people and be completely alone.
Yeah, nobody really knows me.
Yep.
I don't know if they're around me because they actually like me or because they want to be popular.
Yep. But then she says that's a decision that she makes, that she has chosen it because it's better to her than the alternative. Whereas Buffy has chosen the alternative. And to have her smaller groups. And of course, so poor Mitch gets taken out by a bat. Xander had a great line, maybe it's a vampire bat.
Also, Mitch was taken out by a bat right when he was doing like locker room talk. Like, he was saying some really like nasty shit about Cordelia. So I'm not so sad he got hit by a bat.
And of course, Cordelia is just really upset that he's not going to look good in time for prom photos. Turns out not to be a problem because she's ditched him and is dating Kevin by the next episode. But, so again, there's not too much to this episode. I do have one thing that I love, which is at the very end, when Marcy gets taken away by the government to join her secret classroom of invisible spies and assassins, she opens up her textbook. And if you read the textbook, it is the lyrics to a Beatles song. And which is Happiness is a Warm Gun? I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, I know the line that you're talking about.
Yep, Happiness is a Warm Gun. but they change it to Joy is a warm gun. And I don't know if that's because of copyright issues. But like, you know, the line is, she's not a girl who misses much. She's well acquainted with the touch of the velvet hand, like a lizard on a window pane. The man in the crowd with the multicolored mirrors on his hobnail boots, lying with his eyes while his hands are busy, working overtime, a soap impression of his wife, which he ate and donated to the National Trust. Mother Superior jumped the gun. Joy is a warm gun. And
I don't think I ever noticed that.
it is like, I remember, again, this is 2000s, my sister and I bought the DVD set of Buffy seasons 1, 2, whatever. And when we got this and we paused it, we're like, what does it say? And we're like squinting our old CRT, like CB, like television, trying to like read it. And again, this is back during the days of the internet, and we're like writing down what we can and trying to figure out, what does this mean? Is it a book? Is it a quote from a book? And then we found out it was Beatles lyrics, and we're like, Easter egg!
A bizarre one at that. So I have a bizarre, like a fun fact about this episode is right around this time that Xander was told to stop working out because he was starting to become too buff to be a nerd.
Gotcha.
And I was like, what an interesting, shitty thing to say to someone.
Yep.
Oh, I have one more actually. So the first season, they actually used a real graveyard instead of, in later seasons, they built the graveyard.
Okay.
But it was too bothersome filming around like the schedule of an actual graveyard. So they built their own once they had money. That was another fun fact I had. But yeah, so when the government comes in, it's the first time that we see in Buffy that the government knows what's going on, which makes sense. I mean, all the weird stuff that had to like set off alarm bells. And if there were demons and vampires running around, you know, the US government would have their hands in that somehow. Yeah. So it makes sense. I'm surprised, like, who knows where this facility is that they took her to? Maybe it is actually where the initiative is. Maybe.
Well, it's very sterile white. Like, it is very.
Like the initiative.
Yep. So, and so that is where we end up as we come up on Prophecy Girl, which is our season finale.
Big arc.
The big arc. And so once again, we hear reference to Cortona, where Brother Luca has been, you know, shouting out about the apocalypse and the end of the world. And Jenny Calendar is like, Brother Luca from Cortona, Italy, says bad things are happening. Hey, Giles, bad things are happening. And what Giles knows, and then later tells Angel, is that the Codex has been deciphered as the Master will rise and the Slayer will die.
And both Giles is trying to figure out what to do. Angel's just in denial about it. And like that's how Buffy finds out, because they're arguing about her fate without including her.
Yep. And she just gives this little laugh, like this little shock laugh. Sarah Michelle Gellar is such an impressive actress. The emotions that she can hold at the same time, you know, really she can show vulnerability and anger and strength and deep wounded sadness all at the same time. It's incredible. So
I don't even know how many times I've seen this episode, but every time she gives the line, is it going to hurt? Like, does it say how I'm going to die? Is it going to hurt? Every single time. Yep. I know it's coming, but Sarah Michelle Gellar just like drives that stake right into my soul.
Because her voice cracks ever so slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, she just delivers the line perfectly. She delivers the entire bit perfectly. And she's like, I quit. And they're like, you can't. And she's like, I did. It's done. Like, I don't want to die. I'm 15. Like, I'm 15 years old.
And the best part is, had she have quit and just not gone, the master wouldn't have risen.
Yeah.
I mean, we would have missed out on an entire other arc, but...
So, again, we see, so Xander. We start this episode with Xander.
Mm-hmm.
Xander practicing asking Buffy out and talking about mating and migration schedule.
Yeah.
And he's just so awkward. And, Willow's like, you can keep practicing on me. Like, you can see she's like, really, keep practicing. And he eventually tells Willow, like, leave. And so that he can ask out Buffy, and Buffy just says no. And she says, I don't think of you that way. And he says, well, why don't you try? And she says no, and he immediately gets assholey.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm sorry, I don't take rejection well. And like, so, but Buffy doesn't stand for it. He says something mean to her, and she goes, that's harsh. And he's like, I'm sorry, I don't take rejection well. But he recognizes, well, that sucked. I took my shot and it failed. And then he turns around and he tries to ask Willow, and Willow's like, nope. Like,
there's during that exchange, there's one thing that because she was like, I think of you like Willow, and he says, Willow's not looking to date you. If so, she's playing it pretty close to the chest. Yep. Now, it's a little bit of foreshadowing, except for the fact that, like, at no point does Willow want to date Buffy, because that's just not the relationship they have. But Willow is interested in women later on. So I was just like,
yep. I believe at this point, Joss Whedon already knew that he wanted this arc with Willow. Mm-hmm. He wanted this exploration. So it's interesting to have him put in those. Actually, the aria that she's supposed to be singing in Nightmares translates into "Child with the witchiness shining from your eyes." So, again, that foreshadowing of the witch/lesbian arc.
Yes.
So then we have, the combination of leading up to prom and leading up to the apocalypse, and we've had this earthquake to signify the apocalypse, and a cat gave birth to a litter of snakes, and
Jenny Callender's like, I'm nobody's fool. I know what's going down.
It's apocalypse. Mm-hmm. And so we've got this going on at the same time as everybody else is really psyched about prom. And Cordelia reaches out to Willow because Kevin is going to be setting up, like, his band stuff. Now, Kevin is played by a 25-year-old actor who's supposed to be playing a 16-year-old boy. Again, this is continual what they do, where and I think part of it is because the bulk and the muscles that they want to show on television, teenage boys don't have yet.
I also think it's a matter of you don't have that many actors who are 16, because they're in school. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get them until they've graduated, for the most part.
But then you could be dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
25 is a pretty big jump.
Yeah.
I was out of grad school at that point. Mm-hmm. To then have him being a sophomore in high school, they had him
failed a lot.
They had him playing someone a decade younger.
Yeah.
And a lot can happen in a decade. But anyway, so Cordelia is feeling lovey towards Kevin, and she really likes him more so than she liked Mitch. And, you know, it could be something real, except it's not because he's dead.
Yeah. And the trauma that happens to Willow upon finding them, with the cartoons playing, which I think is very important, like this room of students has been massacred watching cartoons. And Willow says to Buffy, yeah, they've seen it, and she's like, they came into our world and it wasn't ours anymore. They made it theirs. And that's exactly what the Master's looking to do.
Yeah.
And that is what pushes Buffy into going to face the Master.
Because if there is anything to rile up the Scoobies, it's upsetting Willow. If you upset Willow...
But this is exactly what I was talking about. Buffy is terrified. She knows she's going to die. Her love of Willow and her friends is what pushes her forward.
Yep.
Love overcomes.
Yes.
Love Master.
More than her fear. Her love was stronger than her fear.
Yep. And it's a legitimate strong fear. I mean, I think Giles says Buffy herself has thwarted prophecy after prophecy. However, this is the Codex, and everything comes true in it.
But I mean, also it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because she read it and therefore goes down and therefore he rises. Joyce has gotten Buffy a dress, and she makes a comment, we can afford it with the way you eat.
Yes.
So
Buffy's been so nervous.
She's not eating so healthy, which, you know, she needs those proteins and carbs so that she can fight monsters. She's burning those calories. She should be eating it.
And I looked it up. Joyce is listed as being an art gallery manager, not owner.
Okay.
I looked it up. Now that's according to fandom, buffyfandom.com or whatever it is. So
we shall continue to research Buffy's mom's role in the gallery.
Her occupation, yes. But her dress is very bridal.
Yeah.
Very virginal, very bridal.
And it really harkens back to the movie.
Yeah.
So in the movie, and this is going way back, we've got Buffy in her white dress, and then she gets Pike's leather jacket on top of it. And so you have this, you know, very virginal, bridal Buffy going to meet Lothos in the movie with Pike's jacket. And here we have virginal, bridal, white gown Buffy with Angel's jacket going to meet the Master. Mm-hmm. And everybody keeps commenting on her dress.
Even the Master.
Willow says, I really like your dress. Master strikes her down, takes a quick bite. Like, he doesn't even really suck that hard. He's like, okay, great, I'm full of power. Mm-hmm. Drop you in the water. It was a very, very quick bite. I don't think he got that much out of her.
I think it was an insult to her, really. Like, I'm not even going to, drain you dry. I'm going to let you drown. This isn't going to be quick. Yep. You're going to suffer.
Yep. And so he drops her in the water, and he leaves, and he says, by the way, I really like your dress. Again, second one, really like her dress. Now Xander, here is Xander's not willing to just sit around and wait. And he's like, I'm probably going to die, but I don't care. I'm not letting her go to her death by herself. Mm-hmm. So he goes after Angel.
Yep.
And makes Angel, and he waves a cross at Angel's face, and he's like, you're taking me. Like, we're doing it. Mm-hmm. We're going to back her up. And so they go.
And Xander's always the one that has to go and get Angel. He's always the one that's just like the errand boy going to go get Angel.
Yep. So we have, there are a couple of comments. Willow is hurt that Jenny Calendar is part of the group now. When did she get to join the club? Mm-hmm. Xander goes off in his little rage to go get Angel. They go looking for Buffy, who is drowned. Angel says that he does not have breath, which that's not how oxygen and stuff works, but like if he can talk, he's got breath.
Also, maybe what he's saying is he's not creating the right stuff. I don't know. But Spike smokes.
Yeah.
Spike smokes.
Yeah. So anyways, all this happens. Mm-hmm. And we get, like Buffy is resuscitated. Yes. But Buffy was dead.
Yes. Which is very important.
Which is very important.
Not just to her sight.
And she comes back and she feels good. She feels strong. Almost as if she's tapped into something deeper inside herself. Mm-hmm. And of course, she's got her banter that she relies upon a lot. And it's, I see a bad guy, punch, like, let's go, let's do this thing. Meanwhile, the vampires are all converging upon the library because it turns out the school is literally on top of the Hellmouth. It's not just like Sunnydale. The school is the...
But they... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
Oh, they initially thought that it was going to be the Bronze because that's where the prom is. Why they keep having all of the school functions at the Bronze and not at their school gym is beyond me. That has to be a rich school to do that, to just like rent that place out. But Willow and Jenny are on their way to the Bronze, and all of a sudden, all of these vampires are walking very zombie-ish toward the high school. And Cordelia comes flying through with her as a white knight going, get in, and literally drives them through the building to the library, which is the most Cordelia thing ever in this. I do love, though, that they have to stop Giles from going after the Master himself because he was going to go in place of Buffy, and it's his first real, like, because he takes what she says to heart. Like, she is a child, and I'm not just going to watch her die. Yeah.
He is an adult who has, he's still young, but he's an adult who has lived his life, and he is going to protect her if he can.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And he's very emotional about it.
Yeah. So then, the Master arises, and he is on top of the library, and the first little baby demon with tentacles rises up of the Hellmouth and grabs onto Willow's leg. And you don't mess with Willow. Yeah. So Giles grabs his battle axe and, they start chopping away. And Buffy, goes to confront the Master again.
And he did not see this coming because it's not in the prophecy.
Yep.
He just is kind of like, huh?
And again, and so this is similar to like the Lothos thing, where Lothos puts her under a thrall. Mm-hmm. He puts her under a thrall, and she banters her way out of it.
Yep.
You have fruit punch mouth. Yeah. And like, huh? Yeah. And he's what? And punch and stake, and throws him through the ceiling, and skewers him on a beam that was exposed partially because of the earlier earthquake. Like, so the earthquake did some of the damage, and then the demon did the rest, but that's what exposed the wood that he's eventually impaled upon.
Mm-hmm. And he's so old that his bones are actually left behind. His bones don't dust, and he dusts very slowly.
Yes. Yep. There's a lot of pyromysticism behind him. He dusts slowly. Mm-hmm. And so there's, everybody all together, and I say everybody, I mean Jenny Calendar and Xander and Willow and Buffy and Giles and Angel and Cordelia, and they're all together. The other vampires have just kind of dispersed because, oh crap.
Yeah, if they just kill the master, like, what are they going to do to us?
The Anointed One's actual role in all of this was pathetic. He was like, oh yes, come with me. And she's like, I know who you are. I got it. Like, let's go. So like, what was his entire role supposed to pretend to be a hurt little boy?
Yeah, I think so.
Seems very anticlimactic. So.
Yeah. The one thing that always bothers me when they get trapped in the library, or like vampires are trying to get in, those are swinging doors, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And they barricade it, and they're trying to just pull.
Yep.
Just pull. That's all you got to do. Every single time. I'm like, if you're going to do this, give this room different doors. Yep. It drives me bonkers because it's not the first time. Well, it's the first time, but it's not the last time we're going to see them barricading themselves in, and vampires just being like, I can't get in. I don't know how to open a door. Huh.
Did you see Cordelia bit a vampire?
Yeah, she did. How do you like it?
And she's like, she noms on him.
Yeah. Yeah, and he literally says, how do you like it? Yep. Like, well, they would have been bitten already if they're a vampire, but
By the way, Buffy points up, she goes, I'm wearing a press-on, and I'm pretty sure she wasn't wearing a press-on. I'm pretty sure that was her finger. Like,
she's just mocking him.
And then the master is like, these are my demon nails, and they're so obviously really bad press-ons.
Maybe in the Buffyverse, the master actually is so old he can't grow fingernails and is self-conscious about it, so he sends his minions out to get him press-on nails.
Yep, that's obviously
what it is.
Yep.
And she's mocking him because he can't grow nails anymore.
Well, okay, actually, I want to follow up on this. If they don't grow hair anymore, like if their hair doesn't grow anymore, or they don't need haircuts anymore, or their nails don't, do vampires have to clip their nails?
I don't know. So later on in season 3, there's a vampire so old that his hands are hooves.
Yes.
So I think that their nails and hair still grow. Definitely their hair. This is what I think what happened to Hoof Guy. I think he, like, how humans' nails will take and curl if you don't take care of them. I think he was so busy being like, nom, 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 I'm a vampire, that his nails turned into little hooves. That's not what happened.
I think as he was so old, he was so demonic.
Yeah.
He started out cloven, not that he became cloven.
That is clearly what happened. But in this version of the Buffyverse, it is actually a story about how you need to trim your nails and your pet's nails, otherwise they're going to have hooves.
Good to know. Good to know. So then they decide that they're going to finish out the night by going to the Bronze to dance. And Angel says, by the way, I really like your dress. Mm-hmm. And Buffy's like, it's been said. Like,
by everyone.
And we end on the bones of the master. Mm-hmm. So, Buffy is not by herself. She is surrounded by her people. She has triumphed. She has her angel jacket and, has come back to life. And that is how we end season 1.
Yes. And this idea about Buffy's a Slayer, but she's different from other Slayers. Not necessarily, all the other Slayers were strong. They've all been strong, and there's nothing wrong with them, but they were all forced to leave society, really, like to withdraw from their families, to withdraw from their friends. Buffy has not done that, and that's what makes her different. She has a support system, not just in that there are people that will go to bat with her and, you know, physically fight with her and help her do the research and everything else, but that these are people who are going to be her emotional support. They're going to help her work through these issues as they come up and keep her grounded and centered, so that, you know, when she won't get so tired of constantly basically fighting for her life. It keeps her tied to the world, and it's tied to what she's fighting for, what the world is that she's fighting for. She's fighting for Willow, you know. We're all fighting for Willow.
But again, this first season of introducing the world, introducing the characters and the development, and we are facing the idea of, you know, actual or real life demons and problems being portrayed with otherworldly demons and problems, and, you know, fighting one to help fight the other.
Yes.
So we are going to continue on with those conversations, and probably also link it into the real world demons that, you know, we are dealing with right now.
Yes. So. And as because I think one of the compelling things about Buffy is that it's very relatable. You know, certainly there are enduring themes with like the demons and such, but what the characters face are things that, you know, people in general face. And it's something that is very relatable. So we will talk about also our own experiences with that and how we got sucked into the Buffyverse.
Yeah. All right. So next week we will be tackling season 2.
One of my favorite seasons.
Thank you very much for just jossing with me tonight.
It's always a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time.